Good evening and welcome. It's Tuesday, April 21st, 2026, and you're watching Last Week Today. We're a compilation of the most important stories of the week from legacy and new media. Now, my name is Chuck Black, and my partner in crime, as every night, is Richard Gagnon. Richard, how's it going?
Well, doing great.
I hear it's good. It's wonderful. I'm sorry.
I got the sun just peering through the clouds right now. It's not too bright, so I can at least have the blinds open.
I heard it was a wonderful day out there in BC.
Yep, it's 21 degrees out there.
Ouch, you are the luckiest place in Canada every spring. You got sun today, you got warm weather, life is good.
Yep, we do.
And it looks like you're feeding well as well also.
I'm just having a couple of cookies.
Yeah, you're making me hungry. I think we should move on to our first piece so we can finish up and I can have supper.
Okay, sounds good.
Our first piece tonight is all about Mark Carney's fireside chat. Although that's not what he called it. He called it forward guidance. He came out with it on Sunday, April 19th. He published it on YouTube. The April 19th Mark Carney on YouTube post, Forward Guidance with Prime Minister Mark Carney. And I call it a modern day fireside chat. It's designed specifically for platitudes for low information Canadian voters. And here's the first minute of the fireside chat on Forward Guidance.
I know from experience that outside forces can sometimes seem overwhelming. My previous jobs at the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England was part of my duties to make regular public reports on what we were doing to manage the economy. And I remember during the financial crisis, when there was a real risk of panic, I developed a practice called forward guidance. It was designed to assure people that however difficult the situation seemed on any given day, that we were acting, and importantly, that we would continue to act with overwhelming force against our problems until they were solved. And that's the spirit I'm talking to you about today.
Now that sounds like a bunch of platitudes, don't you think, Richard?
Mm-hmm. Now, keep the people,
here's the context.
Keep the people happy.
It's what?
Keep the people happy.
Absolutely. And keep them convinced that he is calm, collected, and able to functionally control the government.
Right.
Now, it's a 10-minute piece. Carney pushed it out on Sunday, and it was essentially a 10-minute address to the nation, declaring that Canada's deep economic integration with the United States, once considered to be our greatest strength, has become a weakness, which must be corrected. Now, Carney invoked the spirit of Major General Sir Isaac Brock from the War of 1812. Carney argued that Canada can no longer rely on a belligerent neighbor that has raised tariffs to levels not seen since the Great Depression. Now, he goes on to say,
we have to take care of ourselves because we can't rely on one foreign partner. We can't control the disruption coming from our neighbors. We can't bet our future on the hope that it will suddenly stop. But we can control what happens here. We can build a stronger country that can withstand disruptions from abroad, that creates good jobs here at home, that's a leader in this new world with a vast network of reliable allies. That's the Canada Strong plan we're putting into action. Its goals are ambitious: to catalyze $1 trillion in investment, to create one Canadian economy out of 13, to build new trade and energy corridors, and to double the size of our clean energy capacity. Yes, that's ambitious. But in a crisis, fortune favors the bold. And there's comfort and confidence to be found in our country's history. After all, our ancestors built an improbable country in an inhospitable land where people were free to live their own lives. When I get into the office, I always look at this statue on my desk. It was given to me by Mike Myers just over a year ago. And this is General Isaac Brock. Brock was a hero who fought and gave his life for our forebears in the War of 1812. Before Canada even existed on paper, it had a shape in Brock's imagination. Faced with the threat of an American invasion, Brock built alliances across our land and inspired what would eventually become Canada. Others carried that effort forward. People like General de Salaberry, citizens like the Voltigeurs, who defended Châteauguay, and indigenous heroes such as Chief Tecumseh, who united indigenous nations across the Great Lakes to resist U.S. expansion and protect their lands. They battled together against a common foe, and by doing so, they made our life today possible. This statue of General Brock that I see every morning in the Prime Minister's office reminds me that when we're united as Canadians, we can withstand anything. Long before Confederation, our country was forged by Indigenous peoples, coureurs de bois and voyageurs, who mapped their continent and built vast trading networks from coast to coast to coast before the Americans had even left St. Louis. When the Second World War ended, Canada was ambitious, determined, and united in a mission to build big things. The St. Lawrence Seaway, Trans-Canada Highway, Expo 67, the CN Tower. We built new neighborhoods for hundreds of thousands of veterans and their families. And we opened new universities to launch their careers. We've begun to make big structural changes in the Canadian economy. And they're all designed to make us stronger at home and less reliant on the United States. On housing, we're taking a solution from the past, modernizing it, and creating a new housing agency to build affordable homes faster and transform the housing sector in the process. It's already up and running. And though we have a ways to go yet, housing affordability is already improving. For example, asking rents across Canada at their lowest level in nearly 3 years. On energy and infrastructure, we're removing roadblocks that have been getting in the way of big projects. On trade, to sell our goods and create new jobs, we're building relationships with other countries. We've signed 20 new deals on 4 continents in less than a year because Canada has what the world wants, from energy to education. We have the values to which most of the world aspires. And we're a reliable partner in a world that is anything but.
Now, I sort of think Carney is pitching Canada Strong, the Liberal Party plan to centralize and bolster the federal government in order to do what they call Trump-proof the nation by diversifying trade towards the other continents and centralizing the Canadian economy by cutting back on provincial powers. They want to centralize everything in at the national level and eventually maybe even in the PMO's office. Now, critics label this the nostalgia strategy. They argue that Carney's technocratic forward guidance fails to address the immediate reality of double deficits over the last 5 years and a fractured relationship with the Yankee customers that buy 2/3, maybe more, of all Canadian goods. Now, here is a counterpoint. Here's an overview of the nostalgia strategy, courtesy of something back in January, the January 23rd, 2026 Hosh on YouTube post under the title, "Nostalgia is not a strategy. The uncomfortable truth about Canada's dependency on America." Now, it's an AI-generated video, but it makes common sense, and it's done by my favorite AI announcer, Asian guy. Here we go.
Davos, Switzerland, January 20th, 2026. Mark Carney stands at the podium. The room is filled with the most powerful people on Earth: presidents, prime ministers, billionaires, the architects of the global order, and the Prime Minister of Canada says something no Western leader has said out loud in 80 years. The old order is not coming back. We should not mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy. But here's what nobody in that room wanted to say out loud. The old order was Canada's strategy. For 80 years, Canada's entire economic model was built on one assumption: America will always be there. America will always buy our oil. America will always protect our skies. America will always let our best engineers work in Silicon Valley while we keep pretending we have a tech industry. That assumption is now dead. Carney just admitted it on the world stage. But he did not tell you what comes next, because the math is brutal. 76% of everything Canada sells goes to one customer. One customer who just threatened 25% tariffs. One customer who is asking why they should defend a country that refuses to defend itself. One customer whose president keeps calling Canada the 51st state. Today, we are going to perform a forensic autopsy on Canada's dependency. We are going to examine the energy umbilical, the brain drain pipeline, the defense subsidy, and the capital suck. We are going to answer the question that Carney cannot answer publicly. Does Canada exist because of America? And what happens when America decides it no longer needs a northern neighbor? This is the story of the kept country. 1. The 76% problem. One customer, one exit. Let us start with the number that defines Canada's existence. 76%. That is the share of Canadian exports that go to the United States. Not 76% of trade. 76% of everything Canada sells to the world goes to one country. $3.6 billion crosses the Canada-US border every single day. Not every month, every day. Canada is the number one destination for American exports. $350 billion a year flows north. 34 American states sell more to Canada than to any other country on earth. Michigan alone exports $30 billion to Canada annually. Sounds balanced, right? Sounds like a partnership of equals. It is not. Here is the asymmetry that determines Canada's fate. Trade with the United States represents 24% of Canada's entire GDP. Trade with Canada represents 4% of America's trade deficit. Read that again. For Canada, the American market is the economy. For America, the Canadian market is a rounding error. When Trump imposed tariffs in 2025, Canadian exports fell by 10% within months. Tens of thousands of manufacturing jobs vanished. The auto sector was devastated. Steel mills went quiet. Lumber yards closed. America barely noticed. This is what economists call asymmetric interdependence. It sounds technical. What it means is simple. Canada needs America far more than America needs Canada, and everyone knows it. Carney knows it. That is why he went to Davos and announced Canada would diversify its trade relationships, double non-US exports by 2035, sign deals with China, Qatar, the European Union, build new partnerships. But here's what happened after Carney launched his elbows up campaign to trade with the rest of the world. Canadian investment in the United States increased. Canadian pension funds poured more money into American stocks. Canadian businesses expanded south, not east or west. The gravitational pull of the American economy is not a policy choice, it is physics. You cannot diversify away from geography. You cannot will yourself onto a different continent. The United States shares the longest undefended border in human history with Canada, 8,891 kilometers. You cannot email oil across that border. You cannot zoom lumber. Physical goods require physical proximity. And 76% of Canadian goods have only one place to go.
Richard?
Interesting. But that's true. That's been like that for so long.
I think it is.
And what I've been pushing for most of probably the last 20 years is that we need to be pushing products to other countries.
Yes.
Not to the United States, because what happens is the United States takes our products and then they turn around and sell it, mark it up and sell it to the rest of the world.
Not always, but a lot of the time, yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
They have a preference for our raw materials, our lumber, our minerals, our wheat, our grains. Yes.
Yep. So we got to make sure that we don't sell just to the United States. We got to change that to be 26% sold to the States. The rest of it sold around the world.
I think that's probably true. So you're saying you're supporting Carney's initiatives?
Well, to that extent, yes. And I've been saying that for a long time. So maybe he's been hearing me in the background. Who knows?
One thing I like about you is that you're consistent and you're very often right. We can absolutely hate many of the things our current prime minister is doing relating to freedom of speech and the centralization of authority within the PMO's office. But when he's right, he's right. We should not depend 100% on the United States for our exports and our imports.
Right. Exactly.
So where does it go to from here? Do you think Carney will be able to diversify?
Well, he's been doing a lot of traveling and selling around the world. So there's a possibility that he'll be successful with that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's keep the optimism going.
I like that. We should be optimistic once in a while.
Yes.
Shall we go on to our next piece?
Sure.
Also in the news this week, new NDP leader Avi Lewis has launched a high-profile campaign, essentially urging Prime Minister Mark Carney to ban what he calls surveillance pricing. This is the practice of using consumer data to set individualized prices for goods and services. Now, this is more commonly known as algorithmic pricing, and it differs from something like dynamic pricing. For example, Uber's surge pricing, they charge more at 6 o'clock in the evening when people are going home from work, or travel pricing, where travel airlines charge more during school holidays. Algorithmic pricing targets an individual specific data profile, essentially your social credit score, rather than market demand. Airline pricing charges for the biggest demand. Uber surge pricing charges when people are mostly going home. But algorithmic pricing is very predatory. It takes all our social information, our politics, our preferences, our income, where we live, what we drive, and what we tend to want to spend money for, and each of us has an individual price based on what the government feels we should be paying, or maybe banks what they feel we should be paying. Now, the NDP argues that this is a very predatory new normal that exploits personal data. And according to this piece up here, over half of Canadians support the ban on algorithmic pricing. And because of this, the Carney government is under a certain amount of pressure to regulate how corporations watch and price citizens in the digital marketplace. Now, as I said before, an individual data profile includes things like income, preferences, politics, where you live, and all this data is mostly owned by corporations, which are able to bypass most government data security laws. And they do so whenever they want to do something with the data. So I'm willing to bet money, and so is Avi Lewis in the NDP, although I think he's nutty or otherwise. We both think the corporations are going to try to make money off of all this data information they have lying around on their computers. Now, if corporations think you will pay 20% more for a product than your neighbor, they'll charge you extra. They've shown a willingness to do so already with things like premium brand pricing and the higher cost for items in nice neighborhoods where the more affluent live. But in the past, vendors had to guess your affluence. They looked at your shoes, they looked at your deportment, they looked at where you live and what you drove. But they won't have to do that anymore. In the very near future, any purchase you make with your bank cards or through your central bank digital currency will provide vendors access to a database with everything they need to know to just extract every last ounce of cash from your pocket. They will essentially be able to perform a complete cashectomy upon you and I anytime they want. Richard?
They're going to try.
They are going to try.
Yeah. But people are a little bit smarter than that, I think. Of course, I use cash to buy everything I can, but I also use credit card for the reason that I get free groceries off my credit card.
Mm-hmm.
So I might as well get some benefit out of that.
Yes.
But as far as people go, they're starting to smarten up. They're not buying into this nonsense that they've been thrust at them for the last little while.
No, I think it's getting obvious that if the bank wants to collect and the government wants to collect all the banks information and the bank wants to collect all of our information, that information has a certain amount of value.
Yep. Yeah. And in my case, if I'm paying cash, they don't know it's me.
Absolutely. That's why we absolutely need cash.
Yeah.
One of my heroes, Catherine Austin Fitz.
Cash is king.
Absolutely. We need to use cash as much as humanly possible. Doesn't matter if the bank says, what do you need that $1,000 for? You say, well, I'm going on a hot date.
Yep.
And then you should be you should be safe. But I think that
if the bank says, what do you need that cash for? Well, I need a prostitute for tonight.
Well, prostitutes are illegal there.
No, that doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's
good point.
Not traceable with cash.
But I think that while the NDP is mostly nuts, their first policy out the gate to protect the information banks and governments collect from you is a good plan. And I don't like the idea of everybody getting their own unique pricing for a product. That makes it really hard to tell a value. That moves us away from we're all equal under the law. We're all equal under commerce. And moves us into a place where we're all individuals. We can't really work together to get anything done, and it's just a complete and utter total mess.
Yep.
Shall we go on to our next piece?
Sure.
There is an awful lot of weird stuff going on in Iran, at least according to the various recent accounts in legacy media over the last week. You see up on the screen a quick search from Bing. Those are the popular stories as of about an hour and a half ago. And curiously enough, all of those accounts at the top of Bing and at the top of Google News, they all seem to be focusing more and more on reactions from Washington than on anything that actually seems to be happening. Now, the latest ceasefire seems to be coming to an end, but it may not, without resolution, or maybe with resolution. And the April 19th, 2026 announcement that U.S. forces had seized an Iranian cargo ship doesn't seem to have made any difference one way or the other. Now, there's a lot of confusion in this area, which I expect will clear up, at least for me, when Freedom Forum gets up to speed on some of the open source intelligence tools we profiled in the April 13th Roasting the Press segment on 17 apps suitable for collecting military-grade open source data for news stories. A lot of these applications are already being used by news outlets, and I think this bypasses an absolutely useless legacy media, and it gives us some sense of what's really going on. And several of these apps are free, and most of the rest are not very expensive at all. Now, until that happens, here are three interesting stories which seemingly break the mold of last week's legacy media coverage, but also seem indicative of an emerging pattern in the Middle East. Now, the first one is the April 19th Daniel Lacal post under the title, "From Leverage to Liability, the Hormuz Strait is now Iran's biggest weakness." Now, this post notes that for half a century, the Strait of Hormuz was Iran's weapon to open and close as it saw fit, while still preserving its ability to export its oil to world markets. But with 95% of Iranian crude now being sold to a single buyer, which happens to be China, and normally at a heavy discount, Iran is having some problems already. And a day or so ago, U.S. President Donald Trump just cut off Iran's export capacity. Trump may not be able to win militarily, but the money is no longer flowing into Iran, and that reinforces the stalemate. The Americans couldn't destroy the Iranian infrastructure, but the Americans might destroy Iran's capacity to pay for the war. Now, the second story is the April 18th Zero Hedge post under the title, Netanyahu left personally stunned by Trump rhetoric prohibiting Lebanon strikes. Now, that story notes that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his inner circle were reportedly blindsided last week and left stunned after U.S. President Trump dropped a surprise line, effectively clipping Israel's wings in Lebanon. Trump said publicly, Israel had better stop attacking Lebanon. And that's the thing that seems to have really messed up peace talks over the last month and a bit. Now, the final piece I've noticed that seems to be making a difference is the April 15th, 2026 Alt Markets US post under the title, Trump's blockade is breaking Iran and European elites are angry. Now, that post notes the effectiveness of the US blockade and how it's already causing a stir in European capitals. Everybody agrees that the Americans don't have to bring their oil through the Straits of Hormuz, but maybe the Europeans need to. So they're suffering more for this than the Americans are. Anyway, maybe there's hope after all. Richard, what do you think?
Yeah, there's possibility. Anything that's happening out there right now is really outside of Trump's playbook.
Yeah, I would say so. He didn't want to be a war president. That he's good at making deals. He's not good at bombing people into submission.
Right. Yeah. Although he does do that in business, in the way that he'll do business, he will bomb people in submission, so to speak.
No, I agree with that. But I think that he started out thinking that Israel was his friend.
Yeah.
And he has a more neutral status on that now. At least I hope he does. I don't think Israel's a friend. Yeah.
I think he's probably changing his tune a lot with regards to Netanyahu. Netanyahu's been controlling him basically since day one.
Yeah, I think so. What's his name? His son-in-law is a personal family friend of Netanyahu, and just the Israelis have long-term connections into the American government. And frankly, you've told me this before. I'm surprised you haven't mentioned it. The Israeli government has surprising connections to the Rothschilds and banking.
Oh yeah. I've mentioned that before.
Yes.
Rothschilds, they're all part of that. And of course, Trump is sort of sucked into it because of his son-in-law. Yeah,
I think, and the personal relationship. So I don't know where this is going. I believe there is hope. If something doesn't break soon, we're going to be in for a nasty bout of inflation, and we're going to be better off than Australia or Europe, which will be undergoing some fairly substantial shortages over the next while.
Yep. Yeah. That's going to happen, and it's going to happen in North America too.
Why North America? I thought we were reasonably well off. I thought the Canadians have their own oil, and the Americans are the world's largest oil exporters these days.
Well, we're still not producing our own consumable products here.
That brings us back to our previous piece. The oil goes to the States where it's refined, doesn't it?
Well, it's not just that. It's we're not producing our own toothpicks. We always get them from China.
Yes.
All the products that we buy at Walmarts and all those places, they're coming from China. We're not producing those, and we can produce those.
Yes.
But the reason we're not is because of our permits system. It makes it virtually impossible for corporations to produce these things.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How do you mean? We can't just open up a factory one day and we're able to do it, or what?
Well, you're going to be paying a lot in permits and inspections and all these stupid things that we have in this country.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't need permission to do anything, people. We can just do it.
Huh? I would agree with that. You have to forgive me. It gets dark really quick up here.
Yep.
And I'm trying to fix my lighting.
Well, it's still light out here, 5:30, and it will be like that till about 8:30 or so tonight.
I know. I've told you it's a fact that your outdoor environment is better than mine. So it looks like we have to just sit back and wait for what's going to happen next week.
We just have to get these bureaucrats to stay out of our lives. Then the billionaires will gladly build the facilities to produce the products and sell them to Canadians and other people in the world.
To be fair, that's not what the Prime Minister in Ottawa wants us to do.
Yeah, I know.
He wants us to remember the past.
The past is the past. Let's deal with moving ourselves into the correct future.
Absolutely, and let's make it a distributed future, not so much a future where every thing we export goes to one place or every political decision is made at one location, but a place where we all have a modicum of independence to do and say and feel what we want.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Shall we go on to our next piece?
Sure.
Let me see what we got next. This is one I like. Looks like the good guys have a victory. And according to yesterday's April 20th Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms on YouTube post, massive charter victory, court strikes down woods ban. Jeff Evely's massive $28,000 fine for walking in the woods in Nova Scotia has been overturned by the Nova Scotia Supreme Court. And here's a little 2-minute diatribe by JCCF President John Carpe, providing an overview of what went on.
The Nova Scotia Supreme Court has vindicated the charter rights of Jeff Evely, a veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. In August of 2025, the Nova Scotia government prohibited all hiking, picnicking, fishing, swimming, camping, birdwatching, boating in 3/4 of the province on the pretext of preventing forest fires. This was a draconian law that targeted people rather than potentially dangerous activities like smoking, campfires, cooking. So Jeff Evely, just for walking in the woods, received a fine of $28,872. So thanks to the generosity of donors, the Justice Center funded lawyers for Jeff Evely to take this to court, and he filed a charter challenge asking the court to strike down Nova Scotia's ban on walking in the woods. And we received a favorable ruling on April the 17th, 2026, which happened to be the 44th anniversary of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms coming into force. In this victory for freedom and common sense, the court noted that the charter right to mobility sits at the heart of what it means to be a free person. The court traced the law all the way back to Magna Carta in 1215, and even 811 years ago, it was considered an ancient right of citizens to be able to move freely, enter and leave England freely, and so this is part of what we Canadians have inherited as part of our heritage of freedoms. Our lawyers also pointed out that the Evely case was one where the minister, when imposing this draconian total ban on walking in the woods, had not even considered charter rights and freedoms. So in ruling against this, we've got a great victory for freedom and common sense made possible by the generosity of Canadians. More importantly, this court ruling shows us the importance of perseverance. When we stand up for our rights, as Jeff Evely did, when we speak out, when we support each other, we can once again see the law reflecting our heritage of freedom. I'm John Carpier. Thanks for listening.
Yep, he's really good, that guy.
I've met him once or twice. He is a cool person, very intelligent, very knowledgeable. What I like more than anything else was that his people managed to get a reference to the Magna Carta in a judicial decision. I love that.
Yeah. Well, I met him a lot. I shook his hand a lot when I was in Calgary, and he was there too.
Yeah. He lives in Calgary, doesn't he? That's where the main office is.
That's right. Yeah.
What do you think? Do you think is it something they can use as a precedent for some of the COVID trials still on?
A lot of the people who were dealing with John at the rallies, they thought maybe he was wasting his time.
How come?
That's just the feeling that they gave me when I was talking with them. They just didn't, because they didn't really trust what he was doing. Well, of course, I don't trust lawyers in the first place, but still, John is a very honest man when he's speaking. And now that at the rallies there, he was actually doing things that were good for the people, and the police were trying to stop him.
Ouch.
Yeah.
As I recall, he's been in jail once or twice for some of his crusading legal initiatives.
Yeah, they were trying to stop him. So they thought if they throw him in jail, he'll lose credibility and everything else. Didn't work out that well for them.
Well, no, I was never thrown in jail, but I'm starting to feel a little disappointed by it. You know, sort of like, how do you know you're a true crusading journalist unless you've been thrown in jail once or twice these days?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I don't expect this will be appealed to the Supreme Court, although it can be. Yeah. So I think this is a nice, sensible win. I'm glad Carpe's had a couple of successes under his belt now, and I look forward to the Supreme Court challenge to the decision that the Emergencies Act was unconstitutional and unjustified. I look forward to seeing how that turns out.
Yeah, such another waste of time and money, I tell you.
Well, the good guys are going to win. And yeah, it is a waste of time and effort. If the government wasn't quite so wimpy, they would have confessed their malfeasance, and we'd have all gone on for there. But at this point, at some point, we're going to get to the point where some of us decide that so much evil was done, and so much evil was done hiding the initial evil, that maybe somebody should go to jail.
Right. Yeah.
So I hope that day comes soon.
Oh yeah, it's coming. It will.
Until then, shall we move on to the next piece?
Sure.
How's that for a segue?
See you, John.
According to the April 16th, 2026 How Money Works on YouTube post, under the title, 50% of AI data centers have quietly been canceled or delayed. Now, this post notes that the required infrastructure for central bank digital currencies and the panopticon intended to enslave us, and the AI overlords expected to manage the panopticon is slightly behind schedule. Here's the first couple minutes of the video. It's a fascinating overview.
In 2025, the world's largest companies reportedly spent around $400 billion on capital expenditures to support the development of artificial intelligence. Adjusted for inflation, that would be 9 Manhattan projects or 2 Apollo programs, all within the space of just 1 year, and just on the infrastructure alone. Put another way, last year, more money was set aside for constructing and fitting out data centers than was spent on building single-family residential homes over the same time. And this number doesn't even include non-public companies like Anthropic or OpenAI, which are harder to get reliable financial data on. This number also doesn't include any of the other costs outside of just building and fitting out the facilities themselves, like staffing, energy, security, and strategic acquisitions like podcasts. These numbers are also only for 2025, and of course, recent announcements suggest that spending this year will once again break new records. Now, the borderline comical numbers being thrown around in the AI industry may not be that surprising to any of you anymore, but it has also been almost 4 years since this technology has really come onto the scene with the first public release of ChatGPT. In that time, not a single one of these companies has figured out how to turn a profit with this technology, even when using generous financial projections and accounting tricks. The exception to this, of course, has always been NVIDIA, alongside the other hardware suppliers and chip manufacturers upstream of them. The classic analogy that you are probably sick of hearing by now is that all of this may very well be an unsustainable gold rush, but the hardware companies are the ones making reliable profits by selling the pickaxes and the shovels. However, by following the numbers, it has raised some questions about where these shovels are actually ending up. At the same time, these companies are promising record levels of new spending on data centers. Reports have indicated that over half of the sites that were supposed to be open this year have either been delayed or outright canceled. Logically, it's very difficult for both of those things to be true at the same time. Even if you completely ignore the question of how their end customers are going to keep on paying for this, there are some other concerning logical paradoxes developing at the same time. These companies can't keep up with demand for new chips, and yet their inventories are growing. They are depreciating their hardware over 6 years while claiming next year's models will render this year's completely obsolete. And then there's the question of how they plan to power all of this given the current state of everything.
Nearly half of the U.S. data centers planned for 2026 are reportedly expected to be delayed.
Pushback from communities who say they don't want data centers in their backyards.
10 natural gas plants serving this one single data center.
Excess demand kind of being soaked up by data centers.
We never said we were going to invest $100 billion in one round. That never was said.
Once we've built this sort of generally intelligent system, basically we will ask it to figure out a way to generate an investment return for you.
Certainly, we got no idea how to make money off of it.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. The entire AI project is doomed for failure because it's not following the rules of design.
You've told me this before, but yeah. Go through the process again. Tell me the logic.
When I've read the first white papers on artificial intelligence, one of the key things that the programmers were told to do was to make sure to do no harm to man or woman.
Yes.
Everything that they're doing right now is doing harm to man and woman. Now, why would I say that? Well, if you see what it's doing, it's taking away the jobs of those people that are supposed to be making money to keep the economy going, and it's doing harm to the man and woman.
Yes.
So
I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
I would also argue that the video goes on to note that a lot of what's going on seems to be simply price increases from NVIDIA and NVIDIA's salesman explaining that these new chips are so much better than the old ones. You should buy them every 10 months rather than every 3 years.
Yeah, I know. Every month they come out with a new one. It's so pretty well the technology you buy in now will be obsolete in a month.
Yeah, no, I agree. They do that intentionally. So
it's not really intentionally. It's just the way that everything progresses.
Yeah.
Now, if people stop buying the leading edge or the bleeding edge technology, then they'll find that things will slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
But guess who's controlling the orders on those on all that technology?
Who?
The AI systems.
The AI is building itself bigger and stronger and faster.
Exactly, and it's getting man to do that for them.
I don't know, man. I think energy is spiking. I think so much of what people are talking about in the legacy media makes no sense. It requires a centralization that doesn't exist. It requires technology that doesn't exist, and it's just everybody is living off hopium right now.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So you go.
And that's exactly it. Everybody's living off hopium.
I think it'll be, I don't know, at some point, people are going to stop buying NVIDIA chips. And NVIDIA stock will crash, and it'll be like the tulip wars of the 17th century in the Netherlands. Nobody will even remember why they had to buy so many tulips.
Well, NVIDIA is not necessarily going to go by the wayside because they are very, very quick at coming up with new technology tricks.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really no need for them to go away. What they'll do is they'll end up being bought by the big corporations, but the small guy like me who wants to buy a new computer system won't be able to.
Maybe. I don't think NVIDIA is, to be fair, it's the most heavily capitalized company on the face of the earth. I don't think there's anybody bigger than NVIDIA right now.
Right. I agree.
So, I don't know. I think they will come up with new things. They went through a period where they were pushing podcasts about video gaming, and they were pushing research and development for new video games because they thought that was their core market.
Right.
And they're smart guys. They'll come up with their next plan next week.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I think the U.S. government will be stuck with the husk of companies like Anthropic and OpenAI because the money is just flowing through them and into NVIDIA.
Yep. Yeah.
And I sort of hope that none of these data storage facilities ever roll out, because if they do, corporations will be able to charge me $5 for something I like, and you'll get it for 10 cents because you don't really want it.
Right. Right.
So, anyway, let's go on to the next piece. I hope you have a good diatribe about this one. I like this one.
What do we got? Is this mine coming up?
We have BC Premier David Eby, who has issued a press release, this one right here, in conjunction with the First Nation Leadership Council on the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. It's DRIPA. This is an act BC made law in 2019. It essentially says the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. BC has to apply that. We have to be in compliance with that. And now he has the support of something called the First Nations Leadership Council. But unfortunately for Premier Eby, somebody checked. The First Nations Leadership Council isn't some sort of super First Nations legal body with ultimate authority over native issues. It's essentially a lobby group. And the claim is that BC Premier Eby is surrendering power over past and upcoming legislation to a lobby group because it sounds good. First Nations Leadership Council. What do you think of that, Richard?
No, it's a bunch of BS, and people out here are starting to get a little pissed off at all this UNDRIP. It's not DRIPA, it's UNDRIP.
DRIPA is the BC legislation, isn't it? UNDRIP is the United Nations legislation.
That's right, and they're the ones who created this.
Yes.
So people got to realize that it's the United Nations that are behind it all.
Yes.
And they're trying to basically pass what seems to be control over to a provincial body. No, it's a bunch of BS. My door opened up here. Let's see.
You gonna put a log on the fire?
No. I don't have my door locked right now, and it just sort of came open all of a sudden.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but anyways, no. DRIPA is something that people out here in BC are talking about.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one thing: anybody who comes to try and take anybody's land away is going to be with their a gun barrel at their forehead.
Is this a common thing? Do your neighbors feel this way? Do you think the residents of Richmond, BC feel the same way?
The people who understand what DRIPA is going to be doing are like that. Those who don't understand DRIPA say, "Oh no, that's not going to happen."
Good.
Yeah, right. Wait until they come to your door and say that you're out on the street now.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I can see that. So you're saying that the pressure is starting to build up. The people who own property are becoming increasingly annoyed at the provincial government, which seems to be giving away their land.
Yep. Well, they're taking it away and then giving it to somebody else.
Wow. Another one of those pieces. We don't know what's going to happen this week, but you know, it's worth taking a look at.
Yep.
One more piece, two more pieces. Let's go through them quickly. We're running out of time.
Yep.
This one is related to the data centers and related to our NDP piece. And I find it interesting. This is all about the April 21st Michael Geist post on the title, Is Data De-Identification Dead? Why the AI privacy risk isn't what it learns, but what it figures out. And to me, this article states the obvious that everybody knew right from day one, and it's nice that an authority with connections to the Liberal government is finally coming flat out and saying this. Now, the article says that in 1997, an MIT graduate student named Latanya Sweeney stunned the privacy world by matching publicly available voter rolls with hospital records stripped of names and addresses to identify the supposedly anonymous medical history of the then governor of Massachusetts. Now, 3 years later, she expanded on that finding by demonstrating that 87% of the US population could be uniquely identified by name using just 3 data points: zip code, date of birth, and gender. Now, Michael Geist, Globe and Mail. Oops, did we go too far? I lost a page. I happen to have that happen to me a lot these days. Anyway, Michael Geist, Globe and Mail op-ed. It's linked in the show notes. Notes that Ms. Sweeney's work shaped privacy frameworks worldwide, which responded with de-identification standards designed to manage the risk by removing obvious identifiers, applying statistical tests, and treating the resulting data as safe to use. And indeed, a core tenet of modern privacy regulation rests on the premise that de-identified data can be used, disclosed, and commercialized without compromising individual privacy. Now, Geist, who is an expert in these things, at least for Canada, notes that this premise is collapsing. Oh, there we go. It was just reversed. Anyway, as noted in the article, modern AI systems can access publicly available data from multiple sources, can combine fragments that are individually harmless, and draw inferences that re-identify individuals from information that was never intended to be personally identifiable. And that, to me, is why the NDP has a good point there when they rage against algorithmic pricing, because everybody agrees that, yes, this is possible to do. Now, curiously enough, the Geist article also says that people can do everything AI can do, only it takes them longer. And to me, this means that now we all know that panopticons are possible. What do you think we should be doing? I mean, if the government collects all the information, they will know all about us. Richard?
They'll only know as much as the information provides them, but it won't be all the information.
No, nothing is ever all the information, but it's amazing what you can do if you can combine 2 or 3 databases together.
Yep, I know. I did that when I worked at the university.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing the information you can find out. And I don't think that the laws and the legislation should be optimized so we don't get any of it.
That's right.
And that's what a lot of the current legislation is doing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what do you think? Where is it going to go to from here?
Well, I'll tell you, with all the databases out there, when I was working at the university, I went to a number of evening presentations the government of Canada was putting on with regards to the databases and the data that they're providing people access to. And they gave you all the information, but they did state that it was scrubbed.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, there were no names, no birth dates or anything like that, but the genders might have been there because you might have needed that to do the analysis of the data you were getting. But the ages and things like that, they were all taken out, no phone numbers, no addresses, all that stuff, which is what I was tasked in doing with the university data, is to scrub it so that we could use it for analysis, but not provide everything about all of our customers.
Yes.
So yes, those databases, they are useful, but you got to be careful.
And you got to be careful about putting your data on too many of the databases.
That's right. Yeah.
I would also suggest that this is something I mentioned once or twice previously. The best way to screw up a database is to give fake data.
Yeah.
Sign your name Heathcliff Markov-Popovich.
Yep.
Explain that you're only 27. I'm only 27.
Yep.
Actually, I'm really only 35, but I like to pretend I'm 27.
Well, one interesting piece of information that I do is whenever I sign up on a site or something like that, and they want my date of birth, I give them January 1st of the year I was born.
Yeah, that's not bad.
But the thing is I keep on getting these birthday wishes on January 1st.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's the thing that can save us. We should give up our personal data. Not without a fight. How about that?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So people out there, you don't need to give them the truth. That they don't deserve it. At least I don't think they deserve it.
I don't think they deserve it. They don't give me all their secret information. We talked 3 weeks ago about how the Ford government wants to lock out all sorts of private government data from Freedom of Information Act requests.
Yep.
The government doesn't want to give us their data. Why should we want to give them ours?
Exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, we have one more piece tonight, and I believe it's yours.
Yeah. It's on the climate change agenda.
The April 20th Mongo Minds on BitChute post, between 2021 and 2023, Antarctica gained over 100 billion tons of ice every year.
Huh. And it was supposed to be melting.
Let's play the video.
Yeah.
97% of 33%. That's the stat the entire climate crisis narrative is being built on. Now, let's look at what's actually happening. Between 2021 and 2023, Antarctica gained over 100 billion tons of ice every year. NASA confirms the Earth has become 5% greener since the early 2000s. That's like adding a second Amazon rainforest in leaf coverage. Meanwhile, in 2024, global CO2 emissions hit all-time highs. Nearly 38 billion tons released into the atmosphere. So, record emissions, yet more ice and more greenery. Now, here's a stat that they all lean on. 97% of scientists agree that humans are causing climate change. Here's what that actually means. It comes from a 2013 study that reviewed 11,944 peer-reviewed climate papers. Only 33% of those papers even took a position on whether humans are to blame. Of that one-third, 97% said yes, humans are contributing. So, what they should be saying is 97% of one-third of the papers even took a position agreed, which means only about 32% of all papers actually supported the data and the idea. The other 67% said nothing either way. That's like quoting Anchorman. 60% of the time, it works every time. That was Brian Fantana. Ron Burgundy's response was, that doesn't make sense. And he's exactly right. And yet that's a stat being used to justify billions in spending, sweeping policy changes, and global pressure to act now. We're being told human-made climate change is the crisis, but the more you look at the data, the less it adds up. Earth's climate has moved in cycles, long before humans and long after after us. And if the ice were disappearing and the planet were browning, you'd never stop hearing about it. But because the facts don't fit the narrative, you hear crickets. It's not denial, it's common sense. And it's about time we start asking the right questions. What's your thoughts?
Yeah. Isn't it wonderful how statisticians can change things to make it look like it's really, really bad? And the people will buy it.
Yeah. To be fair, they made a joke about it in Anchorman. And yes. I remember a joke about numbers in my favorite Naked Gun movie where they were talking about Nordberg, who had just been shot by the villain. And the chief looks at Leslie Nielsen, Frank Drebin, and says, Nordberg has a 50-50 chance of pulling through. And then Drebin says, but there's only a 10% chance of that.
Yep. It's amazing how people will buy into it when they start seeing numbers like, oh boy, nice, 97%. Well, how was that number derived?
Numbers need to be validated. 50% of publications in learned papers, nobody's been able to reproduce them.
Nope.
So I don't know where this is going for. But I do think that the climate change crisis is slowly dying. I've seen articles and things like Canadian Dimension, which is something I call Canadian Demented. It's a leftist workers publication out of Ottawa, and they wrote an article last month saying nobody believes in climate change anymore. How are we going to change that?
Yeah, exactly. And of course, Al Gore is probably really upset about that.
Yeah, I mean, none of Al Gore's prognostications ever seem to have come true.
Nope. He was basically the front man for selling that to the people.
Yeah.
And of course, he's a liar because he doesn't have any credentials to be able to validate anything that he's talked about.
He was a voiceover announcer. He was very good at it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And he might argue that the data supported him, but it turned out to be wrong.
Right. Yeah. Because when he was asked about the data, he couldn't answer it.
Yeah. Well, he can read scripts.
Yeah.
Just a reminder that we have to be cautious about what we see, what we believe, and what we act upon. We need to independently validate everything these days.
Right.
As for yourself, I think we got to wind up. We're running a little late tonight.
Yep. Yeah,
what's on your plate for the next couple of days?
Well, tomorrow I'm going to take a trip to the grocery store. Mm-hmm. And then we've got some campers coming in for 3 or 4 days in the afternoon. And I'm going to finish helping setting up the farm store because we're doing a soft opening on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I spent the day setting up the batteries. That was a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
And tomorrow we're also going to go pick up another 4 batteries from somebody who's selling them at $30 a piece, which is really good price.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's what you would get if you brought them into the recycler. But anyways, we're going to get the 4 more tomorrow for the farm store. I've already got my 4. I got 4 new batteries the other day.
Okay, wow.
And I'm setting them up inside my tent here to make sure they work. And then, of course, I'll be doing that. And then Thursday, we'll do the 1 hour show or half-hour show or whatever it is. And then there'll be Friday, there'll be another 8 stories.
That is on the channel scrolling along the bottom of the screen or remaining stationary, starting at 7:30 a.m. Pacific time, I believe.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. We're looking at, the end of April. Let's put it that way.
Oh,
Did
wow.
everybody go over to their dead corporation called the social insurance number and file their income tax? Because apparently if you don't have it filed by the 30th, there's a benefit that you might lose out on.
I didn't know that. What's the benefit?
It's part of this grocery thing, but I'm not sure exactly how it is because I've heard, everything I've heard about that is that regardless, you're going to get a lump sum payment. But some people say that you're not going to get a payment unless, of course, you file your taxes by April 30th. So I don't know, but anyways, I just decided that I contacted the owner of that social insurance number of mine and said, file the income tax, and the guy did. That was me.
I filed my income tax. If something's going to come by, I'm hopefully going to get it. But it is a pain. The government gives us stuff to be nice to them, and then they ding us on the big stuff.
Yeah, but this one they're not going to tax. It's for people like me who don't have a high enough income for the year.
Oh, wow. Well, good for you.
Yep.
And on Sunday, I'm hoping you'll do another Roasting the Press because it's fun.
Yep.
And I'm not sure if we're going to do a last week today on Tuesday, because I was supposed to go to Toronto this week with Marianne, but we both came down with an ugly cold, so we postponed our trip for the week. And I have a marketing presentation on Tuesday with a local business, and I want to be able to do that. And we may drive out as soon as the marketing presentation is done, or we may spend the night. So I'll let you know later on in the week if we're doing a Tuesday show.
Okay, sounds good.
As for Freedom Forum news, come up there. We normally record every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. now on a variety of internet platforms, including the one you are watching. We republish next day with notes on our Substack page at chuckblack.substack.com, which has been getting really good traffic lately. And most of our stories slide behind a paywall after a month online. So if you'd like to maintain access, the easiest thing to do is to sign up for a monthly subscription. $20 a month, $160 per year. This entitles you to access archive posts, anything over a month old. It also includes a lot of in-depth articles not covered in our regular stories. Lately, we've been doing a lot on open source data repositories, which I think is useful for independent journalists. We also have a Substack app that helps you access Freedom Forum stories from your phone, and subscriber chat so you can tell us what you really, really want. My name is Chuck Black. I directed this show using StreamYards, which we recommend, both Richard and I, but only if you sign up using either Richard's or my link. We automatically get a little bonus out of this at the end of each month to help defray some of our costs. I know Richard is paying yearly, and it's a big onerous
I changed that, Chuck. I changed it to monthly.
Oh, good stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's a little more overall, but it's a little easier to take on a month-to-month basis. But anyway, if you want to start a podcast, you want to work on StreamYards, and you sign up using one of our links, it helps not only you, but it helps us as well. Now, tonight's show will be on Substack tomorrow morning, and we'll be back next Tuesday at 8 p.m. with another episode of Last Week Today, I think. And we will definitely be back next Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time with another edition of Roasting the Press. Richard will be available online in a variety of outlets starting 7:30 a.m. Pacific Time on Thursday, Friday, and Monday and Tuesday next week. And we hope you will watch and take a look at some of the things we can do. That's it for tonight. Richard, did I miss anything?
No, that was great.
I will see you in a couple of days, Richard. I will see everybody in the audience in a couple of days. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back.